Randy Drafts, and the last night, we talked about trying to. We want you guys to leave here better sailors than when you came, and the big key to that is a gentleman by the name of Baird, who's coached, all sorts of people, through the years, won a couple of America's Cups, and we're going to keep leaving for a GP52 project tomorrow, as it is. But we're really lucky to have Ed here to kind of demystify some of the stuff. I don't know about you, but my head really hurts after a day of racing across the harbor, and you're trying to figure out everything that you experienced for the day and make sense of it. And Ed's here to kind of decipher it and simplify things, and I'm still thinking about the up-current side of things.
Got to stay up current, Randy.
But anyway, here's Ed Baird, and soak it all in. My advice.
All right. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you, Randy. I am going to use the microphone just so I don't have to talk quite so loud. And I know there's going to be more folks coming in. But there is a bunch of stuff to look at today. And we're going to start by being on this outside course, but I wanted to leave it on pause for a second. This is the offshore course. Charleston is off the top right of the corner, and you can see the breakwater. There's a tugboat coming out with a big long tow on it coming out the channel. And they're that close to the channel that you can see in the top part of this picture, you see the choppy whitecaps water. That's the outgoing current. That's the difference of being in the channel and being just out of it. So they are obviously just out of it here, and they have a lot less current. But the impact of the current on the race course is significant. So when we wanted to watch this for a couple of reasons. One, outside, it was actually lighter than it was on the inside. And these guys, they had lighter air, and they had big waves. Especially look at how the waves are moving. They're coming in from the ocean. They've wrapped around the coastline, and they're coming in from a kind of a northeast direction. And so you start sideways to the waves here on starboard, but as soon as you tack, you're right into the waves. And you guys, is anybody here on the outside course today? You guys were all inside, right? So, it's going to be a whole different deal. But when you sail a boat in these conditions, one of the things that you really want to think about and remember to talk to your team about is not pinching the boats. You've got to keep the boat powering up through the waves and through the water. Like, see, this guy has tacked over, and you can see the waves are even under his bow just a little bit. But look at the boat bouncing up and down. And there were a couple of these guys, especially the one on the top of the screen there with the gray sails, who just didn't allow the boat to press down and get it going and keep it going. And so they were really spat out the back. Now, compared to inside where it's dead smooth, except for the occasional powerboat that goes by, right? It's a whole different experience. Now, looking at the inside, there's a whole bunch of stuff going on today. And we're going to look at several of these, but here's a start. And the wind has shifted way left, and the pin is quite favored, right? So you know that you want to be down towards that end for the best advantage of getting off the starting line. But remember also what is happening on the race course. And I think that a lot of people forgot today or didn't really talk about the big picture strategy, and they just went and they tried to fight for the pin just because it was favored. They forgot why it's favored. And it generally was not better because the wind had shifted left and was forever going to stay there. Typically what was happening is the wind had shifted left and at some point now was going to shift back right. And if that's the case, and especially if it shifts back right beyond what is 90-degree, favored to the starting line, if you start to the right of people, even though the pin's a little favored, and you allow yourself to tack and get out of there right away, you can actually find that later on you're separated a bit more, and when you get a shift back to the right, you've made more gain than you thought. But what you don't want to do is fight for the pin, lose the fight, get stuck in bad air, and not be able to escape from that area. So you need to ask yourselves as a team, are we good enough to fight for the pin to win that position, more times than not? Or do we think it's smarter for us at our skill level, whatever that might be, to be somewhere else on the line? And in this case, and in a number of cases that we saw today, there were very, very strong starts who were the boats halfway up the line this way and were able to tack right away off the starting line, which is pretty cool to watch when you think about it that way. This guy gets a little early, and he ends up getting pushed up and gets over early, so he has to bail out and get out, and he jibes back. The start has not gone yet. Well, I'm actually going to stop it right at the starting gun. There's the flag coming down right there. So there's a boat over early up at the pin. From our perspective, it looked like this boat that was tacking right here might have been over, but they didn't get called. And then the boat on the right of the group that is coming back. But the boat that had the best start 10 seconds later is actually not the boat that's tacking, but the next one up, number 79, who was on port tack at the gun. But they were on port tack with speed, ducking behind that group of starboard boats. And watch how they come out of here. Boom, they come zooming out of there. Look at this. Then the next boat's tacking, but they're still not quite as fast. Those two boats were very strong up the leg because they got right away onto the favored tack. Here's another start with the J105s. And look at the fight that's going on. I'll just stop this again here. Look at the fight that's going on for the pin. Now, nobody was over early in this start, which was great, but there's only two boats that among that group at the pin who win the start, right? Everyone else that was trying to do what they did is now pinching and slow and on the headed tack. The reason the pin's favored is because the wind has shifted left. It's going to shift back right. That's the expectation. So if you move up the line and you go up to, what is that, 630? Is that what that number is up there? Or the guy who's reaching down the line at high speed, all of a sudden, your world opens up because you can tack away. You don't have to be down here fighting for the pin. And we often talk about it in like TP52 regattas where we have 12 boats. We got, somebody's going to win that pin. It's not going to be the same team every time. So let's make sure that we are the same team every time who wins a little bit up the line and is in the top three at the first mark every time. So that's our goal, as opposed to trying to be, trying to be the big victors off of the line here. But watch how this goes now. Especially watch this guy who's reaching down the line. Now the gun has gone just now. And here's this, look at the guy at the top of the screen. He's going 2 knots faster than anybody else, and he has total freedom to tack. And of course, he will tack because he's on the massively headed tack unless he's greedy, and he might be greedy and just wants to hold everybody down. And now guys start to go behind him, but look how slowly the fleet is getting away from this pin. And here's another guy going behind him. I mean, he could have tacked and crushed any of those people and been free out on his own, but instead he's kind of pinching a little bit himself. Even so, the guy was in 4th place at that point at worst. And it's not a bad place to start. Top marks. Wanted to talk about top marks a bit, and especially in, all the boats that have kites, basically. And the J105 is one we saw a lot today. Do this, and that was, they got so excited to put the kite up that they did it a little bit early. And what happens if you put the kite up when the boat is still heeled over and has a lot of apparent wind from the front, so you're on a nice fast reach, you put the kite up at that point, the top of it twists around every time, right? So if you wait about 3 seconds longer before you start hoisting, so the boat is turning downwind and the apparent wind goes way back, kite goes up and goes boom and fills. And it gets all the way to the top before it fills. Watch these guys. I mean, the wrap on this one and a lot of them came out, but there were several that did not. So watch these guys go. It popped out and they were okay, but it was close. They don't realize how close it was. Next boat behind them. Oh, sorry, we'll get that. We have some more of those later on. But that's important to get that, be a little patient on the hoist. Now this is a big view of the starting area once again. This is the Meldish 24s. And wanted to, I'm going to pause it here in just a second for a couple of reasons. Remember what's going on with the current, right? Today was different than yesterday. It wasn't just a downwind current because the wind yesterday was coming straight down the screen. Today the wind's coming over here from the right side. So that means the current is going down. You can see the angle of the current going past the boat here, even though the wind is blowing over this way. And that is making it a bit challenging to have it wasn't like yesterday where the boat had a big opening and it was easy to get in there. Actually, a lot of people today ended up here at the boat and in trouble, a little bit stuck. But then the wind trying to shift left a lot of the time made people want to go down towards the other end, which was good. But look at this start and think about where you would like to be. I mean, here's this guy tacking over just now off of port into a reasonable hole. But he knows he's close to the line, so he pays attention to that. But that's not a bad thing. You know, he got out of trouble and shot through there and got himself in a bigger area of clear air. But look at these people down by the pin. There's little groups of boats that are clumped together that are going to find themselves in trouble in just a few seconds. Watch what happens as time goes by. Few seconds here, and we're probably, I think it's probably 15 until the start, something like that here. They're just everybody getting their momentum going and getting rolling, and then there's the flag just came down, so there's the start. And watch the people who weren't fast off the line get flushed out. Look how quickly, what has it been, 7 seconds, 8, 9, 10. Look how the boat lengths are going away. From the people who fought for that tight position at the pin end and got what we call second row start. Not very happy on those boats. And then where do you go? There's no place to go. So we'll talk more about starts in a moment. Wanted to look up the race course. Little tricky to see the course. Sorry, I'm going to back that up just a little bit. Little tricky to see the course, the puffs and so forth very easily today because there was a lot of cloud motion on the course. But here you can see that up by the bridge there's a really big puff, and then there's a little light spot again, and then just this side of the marina and the breakwater and all that stuff, there's a nice puff in there. These dark spots by the island are clouds, so that's hard. But when you look up here, you can see those darker spots on the water that are actually the increased wind, and you want to try to get to those, of course, and use the angle. One of the things that I thought was really interesting about this picture is it kind of shows, and we've got another one a little bit later, that show how a puff behaves when it hits the water. When you see, now you look up here, and you can kind of see the tracks of the wind are a little more right to left up there on that side, and a little more left to right over here. There's just this dark spot that's going across, halfway up to that little island. And when I look at this, I see the wind kind of spreading out, right? Which is exactly what happens to a puff. Somebody told me one time, if you take a bucket of water and throw it on the sand, you'll see how a puff behaves. So, of course, I had to go out and find a bucket, and I did that. But it really was amazing. You throw it down there, and the thing just kind of spreads out. And when you start to see that, you see how you can actually have two boats on the same tack in the same puff that have very different wind directions. If you're on the good side of the puff, you can be lifted, and if you're on the opposite side, you're actually headed sailing into it because it's spreading out both directions. And that's something that's quite amazing to watch from these aerial shots. So good fun. Here's another start, J70's here. Tough situation for, this is Magatron that's down here. She got into a strong place right there and needed to stop the boat and not be early, just take away all that risk. And she just is new enough to sail on the boat that she wasn't quite aware of that. And so she got down here, and that's 0 right there. And she was just that 2 seconds early. We've all had that happen, right? You get down there, you've got everything is in position, but you are excited to get going. You think, oh, I don't want to be slow, so you keep going, and then you're early. And that's what happened to her, but more happened because she bailed out, and that was wise. She bailed out, turned up here, ducked the starboard tacker, and this is sped up a little bit too. But then this guy tacks back over. What they really, both of these two boats, what they should be doing right here, once you have a tough start like that and you're against the fleet, you want to go across the grain of the other boats. You don't want to tack and get on the same tack as them because now they'll keep stretching away from you. But if you go on the opposite tack of them, you actually get little lifts off of their sails and you have relatively clear air as you sail through the fleet. So she could be right here and turn up. So same with the other boat to the right of her. They could turn up, duck a couple people, and pop through the fleet only 4 boat lengths out of the lead. Or they could tack over here and put themselves in bad air. And that's what ends up happening. So that 4 boat lengths or 6 boat lengths from the lead now starts to get bigger and bigger as they go. It's a challenge to do this well in the J70 fleet. There's a lot of boats and a lot of good sailors in the fleet, and they're sailing the boat well. As they go up the course, it was fun to watch. This fleet in particular seemed as a group to be very good about staying all together on the lifted tack. And the only times that were people really on the opposite tack was when they were forced to be. Here's a great example now of going upwind. This middle boat right here is getting the watermelon seed is what I call it. It kind of between the 2 fingers, and they get spit out the back because the leeward boat comes up from below and the top boat goes down from above, and you just get shot out. But what they're doing, you can look straight ahead up here and see that the Melges, or are those the VX boats up there, I guess? Or those Melges right in front of, those are the VX. Well, the VX are the ones on the same tack right ahead. And you can see from those guys that there's a good puff coming, and it's going to be about a 10-degree header. So now if you did well in your math classes, you can do some quick geometry and trigonometry and algebra and all those things that they told us we'd never use in our lives. You could do some quick math and figure out that if I tack away and we separate from these guys and the shift goes their way, they're going to gain a lot because of the leverage difference between the boats. But if I stay in the same place and go to this shift and tack when I get the shift, yes, I'm going to lose 2 or 3 boat lengths to these guys that are right next to me, but it's only 2 or 3 boat lengths. If you tack now and they get the shift when you are 30 or 40 boat lengths apart, they're going to gain a lot more. And a good thing to keep in your mind that is close, not perfect, but it gives you the idea, is that a 10-degree shift is worth almost 25% of the distance between boats that got the shift. So if you're 10 boat lengths apart from somebody on the starting line, for instance, and you get a 10-degree shift your way, you just gained against them 2.5 boat lengths. Doesn't sound like a lot. It is. It sounds like a lot more when you're 100 boat lengths apart, and that turns into 25 boat lengths. Now again, that's not exact, it's not quite that much, but it gives you the idea. It's an easy way to remember it. 10 degrees is worth 25%. So if this guy tacks right now, sails that way for 2 minutes, and all of a sudden they're 100 boat lengths apart, and they get the 10-degree shift, 25 boat lengths, just like that. Or you could stay on this tack till you get the shift with them and tack on it, and you only lose 2 or 3 boat lengths. When you put it in those terms, it's pretty obvious what to do, right? So these are the type of things that you want to keep talking about with your team as you go through the race course out here. And having this fleet ahead of you is such a great telltale to see what's coming that it's really valuable to have somebody really kind of focusing on that and saying, hey, it looks like the same up ahead, or it looks like something different. It can be as simple as that. And when it looks like something different, well, let's get our heads up and figure out how to use it to our advantage. So these are things that are interesting about Charleston Harbor. It's quite a different place to sail. All right, again, sped up a little bit, but I want to watch something here at the gate. These guys are coming in the gate, and this boat on the left-hand side of these 3 boats, the boat on the left is just slightly ahead of the boat on the right, the 2 white kites. And the red boat is only just slightly back on the 2 of them. So if that boat on the right-hand side of the screen jibed, they would be able to touch the other boat down here. That's how close they are. But watch what happens with the gate. Now they come into the gate, and even though they were basically on the same ladder rung coming down there, almost, it was really close, the boat on the left goes around the correct gate mark. That's right now, that's what, 2.5 boat lengths, almost 3 boat lengths that boat has to sail to get to this gate mark, and he's already rounding. And they're basically only almost overlapped. They're really close together. And then on top of that, there's a little thing called being up current that anybody who came the last 2 days knows I like. And then on top of that, you come out of the mark now, which, these guys are aiming more perpendicular to the gate than the people are down there. So that tells you that port tack is the lifted tack against the gate, at least. And as these guys get going, the left-hand boat in the screen is going to tack over. These guys are going to hang on. Look at the puffs coming down the racetrack. They're up current. They're getting lifted. They went around the correct gate. That boat just gained like 9 or 10 boat lengths against the people that were right next to him at the gate. Now, these are how important these decisions are, that you just keep it simple and go around the correct gate. Go around, try to be up current if you can. Look for the next wind shift. Now this is a rules situation I wanted to talk to everybody about, because I see this mistake happen a lot. When you're on the open course, as these 2 boats are, and you have starboard port, you got to stay clear when you're the port boat, right? So, which means you got to start doing something already. And these guys do a little, but not that much. They kind of turn down a little, but these guys were going to hit them, so they just said, okay, forget it, we'll just go. That's when you're on the open course. But it also is the same if you're inside the zone at a gate. If it's just a single mark, it's different. You got to give room to the inside boat. If the inside boat's on starboard, they have to jibe when it's proper course. But when you're at a gate, the starboard boat gets to choose. They're going to jibe and go to this side, or they might want to keep going and go all the way across to the other side. That's their choice. They're the starboard boat. And that's how the rules work in this situation. So either way, the boat here, the Melgis 24, is at risk from this VX that was going so fast coming up on them there. Anyway, kind of fun to see that sort of interaction out there. There was no voices raised or anything like that. It was all good. All right, getting lighter as the day went on. And here we have another J105 start. Quite favored at the pin. And again, we want to discuss the the way this works. Now, look, the current is moving down the screen or up the line, as we call it, and that makes this a little cluttered up here. These guys are struggling. The guys at the pin think, oh, we should be okay. We can lay the pin because the current's helping us, and they do, but they're slow. And look at this guy in the red come in, and it doesn't take much because all the guys down at the pin are so slow that the red boat is just, all he's got to do is kind of hang on, and he's going to be in the top 3 or 4. Unfortunately, we'll show you something later on that doesn't work out as well for him. But they get out on the race course. Now, again, here's this puff situation that we talked about earlier. Look at the puff coming down the race course, and I think if you look over here on the left, you can kind of get a feeling that the wind is kind of moving this way, where if you look at it here, the wind's coming straight down. And over here, it's kind of going out that way. That is just a classic example of the puff hitting the water and spreading out. So if you're over on that side, on starboard, you're lifted. If you're in the middle, it doesn't really, you don't feel much change, you just get more wind. And if you're on the right, on starboard, you're actually headed, so you want to get on the other tack. And these are part of the tricky things that happen out there with these puffs coming through. It might be the same puff, but because you're 200 yards away from each other, you might have different angle from that puff. So something to think about as you go forward. Race course was incredibly tricky, especially later in the day, as you started to get these big holes out there, and then the puffs would fill in from larger, different angles, larger and larger shifts. All right, is there anybody in here who was on one of these boats in the middle of this picture? Anybody on a J105? No, good. I'm not going to hurt your feelings, but this is one of the toughest things that I've seen in a long time. What I want you to watch is the boat that's just dead center up right in the middle. He's crossing that boat that's on port, and he's crossing these 2 boats, or at least he has a piece of this farthest right-hand boat. And but he's got to go around this weather mark, and he realizes that he needs to step up. He has come in from down current, and he's fighting to get up there. He's not laying the mark, and he's got to take another step. So he knows that, and he says, well, here comes this boat. I don't want these guys to duck me, so I'm going to tack on them. And then he goes, oh, I didn't know there was another boat there. Okay, now this is where the strategy side of things becomes very important. Strategically, at this time on the race course, you gotta get up to the ley line, right? Tactically, you might have to give up a little bit to get your strategy in place. And in fact, that's what this guy fails to do. Remember, right now, he's ahead of the boat straight behind him, and he's ahead of these 2 guys over here, and he's ahead of all those guys on the other side. Oh, so he tacks there because of the starboard boat. The starboard boat tacks, so he tacks right back. Now he's done 3 tacks in about 30 seconds. All these guys roll over the top of him, but he says, no, the first guy, I'm still going to tack inside of him. Watch this. I got him now. I've done 4 tacks in 45 seconds, but then he gets rolled by these guys. And then, just to cap it off, and I don't think we have video of it, but just to cap it off, he gets excited and hoists early and gets a massive wrap in his kite, and 2 boats behind him roll him again. So, moral of the story is 2 things. Look around before you do stuff, but also back here, when we watch the guy, we watch him tack the first time right here, there's a reason he's tacking. The smart reason. He wants to get over to the right and be on ley line. Duck this guy. Set yourself up. If he had ducked that guy, he would be ahead of this other guy tacking right now, and maybe this guy would get him, but probably not. But instead, he lost like 5 boats. And it was really hard to watch, but I was really appreciative because I get to explain it to people like this, right? So, good fun. Tough out there. I know there's a lot of different scenarios that went on and a lot of things that happened. Before we take questions, I just want to take a minute to have you guys turn around and wave to the guy that did all this drone work. That's Ty. He is my son. Ty's a very talented sailor, but obviously he's also a great drone pilot. He worked for American Magic for a couple of years here, flying drones as they went around at 40 and 50 knots all over the place. So he's figured out how to do that, and way better than I can. It's going to go back to a loop here that you can all watch. Are there any particular questions from today? I know there was lots. When I first came in, we were talking to a couple people, but anybody got any specifics about today and what was going on? You have one?
From a rule standpoint.
Nice and loud, please.
From a rule standpoint.
Yep.
What 3 boat lengths apply there?
Okay, excellent question. Asking between those 2 dissimilar boats, the VX1 and the Melges 24, how do you decide what 3 boat lengths is? And that is basically you go by the boat that you're getting room from, the outside, the bigger, it's going to be the outside boat. In that case, it was bigger. But when a boat reaches 3 of its lengths from the mark, if someone else is overlapped, right? So if you were the little boat and you were outside and there was no overlap and you got to 3 lengths and the bigger boat was coming faster and came zooming in there, they'd be wrong. Even though their 3 boat lengths might have happened before yours. But that's not how it's when you reach the zone, anybody inside gets room. So
if it's the biggest boat or the first boat to hit their zone.
when a boat hits the zone for them, if there's someone inside of them, they owe them room. Yeah. I mean, it's a little tricky, but it's also not. So if you just kind of think it through, that's the only way you can really do it. We had a great, I sailed a 150-footer in St. Bart's 3 weeks ago, and we came into a mark rounding that was very similar to that. We were coming in from behind, and we were at the corner of an island, and there was a big dead spot there, and there were all these boats. There was everything from 60 and 80 footers to 250 footers parked at this mark rounding. And we came in there and we're like, yeah, we don't have room on any of these people. And we just had to sail around the whole big pile and eventually just parked up ourselves. But that's just how that works. So big point for today for me was how many starts were pin favored, but after the start and before you got to the weather mark, there were still big right shifts on the race course. In that scenario, if you don't win the pin, you are going to be flushed back into the pack. So for me, I like being up the line farther, starting behind that big pack of boats and tacking away right away to get on the lifted tack. To me, I try to keep it very simple, and that's in my brain, that's what seems to work. I might not be first at the weather mark. Somebody's going to win the pin, but it's not going to be the same team every time. So that's a big deal for me, and what I saw today is a great example of it. We didn't see that many boats that didn't quite win the pin in be successful at the top end. Because now they were in trouble, they were slow. As soon as they tacked to duck several people, somebody would tack on them, then they'd have to tack back, and then, and first thing you know, they were back in the second half of the fleet. But you start up here on your own, if you get a lift, you're happy. If you don't get a lift, you tack away, and you're on the lift on the other tack. So, something to keep in mind. Tomorrow, tomorrow morning, how many of you did the weather thing this morning? Anybody look at that? Okay, about half, that's good. The weather, we have a weather thing on Facebook Live for the Charleston Race Week at 8 o'clock in the morning and talking about the weather. Tomorrow the weather looks pretty light, but the current is going to be as much as today or even a tiny bit more. And it's, yeah, great, it's exciting. Think of it as an opportunity, okay? And so you're going to have a great opportunity tomorrow to learn or to see this new current that's pushing through. And depending on what we get for wind direction, make sure you talk about what does this do to our ley lines and our cores. Almost every start today had many people late to the line because the current was holding them back. That first offshore was a great example. Nobody forcing them, they were just late because the current was holding them back. And that's going to be the way it is tomorrow. The other thing is, if it is light, make sure when you go out you have a plan for how to power up the rig on your boat. Keeping your boat powerful in these lighter conditions and the motorboat chop and stuff that happens out there can be a big deal here. Make sure you don't pinch, keep your boat going fast, and keep the power on it, so it goes well. And then look around the race course. Make sure there's somebody on board looking for big, significant changes that are happening out on the racetrack. You can see them coming. Sometimes it's just critical to stay on the tack you're on. Sometimes you can say, nope, this isn't good. We want to go over to somewhere else and get the next big thing that we see coming. So that's a big part of the strategy here in Charleston. All right, so I'll leave this playing. Anybody wants to watch it, but I think it's rum time. All right, so thank you for coming. Have fun tomorrow. We'll see you later.